What's going on? What's going on? What's going on, good people? What's going on? What's going on, good people? Let's share. Get in this, get in this, get in this podcast. Share. Look at what I got on today, y'all. My Black Wall Street. Shots out to Tulsa, Oklahoma. My Black Wall Street shirt on. Let's share. Let's get out there. We're going through the what if scenarios. Matriculating through. This is the second podcast of the year. We are being consistent, true to the fake, true to the fact. I shouts out to those people. John Hayden, I appreciate you tuning in. Rebecca Rose, thank you for tuning in. Let's share. It's a big conversation. We're doing the what if scenarios, and so as I get to that 5-minute mark, as we get ready to roll. Let me get this thing. I don't have COVID. I promise you, I'm good. While we get to this point, while we get to this conversation, the What If series is a spinoff of what I've been observing with Marvel Comics. Marvel Comics did a What If series with Disney, and basically what it is, it shifted characters and everything like that. And so what it does is it opens up our minds, it opens up our pathways and understanding what we should be thinking, logically speaking, moving forward with our narratives in our community. And so I'm continuing with the what if scenarios. And it's so important. Let me put my phone right here just in case somebody tries to contact me. It's so important for us to make sure that we're doing what we can in our community. I've been doing the live sessions, and the month of January is what I call my fine-tuning time. That's where I'm going to do all my fine-tuning, really build the audience for this platform. It is what it is. Basically, what we're talking about when we talk about it is what it is. We're bringing real life scenarios across these United States of America. I spoke of it earlier last month. We was kind of thinking where we want to go at in terms of our conversation going into 2020, where we want to go in our conversation in 2022. And basically what we really want to focus on is locally, Savannah, Georgia, Chatham County politics, and how the world affects the Chatham County area. And so it's so important for us to make sure that we're doing what we got to do, moving our narrative forward, having those candid conversations that we're not afraid to talk about. But my thing is we got to bring logic, sensibility to it, and making sure we're moving the narrative forward. And so this is what this conversation is all about. It is what it is, and we're going to be starting in less than 59 seconds. We're talking about the what if scenarios in our world, in our society, and mainly what we want to do is we want to focus on the what if scenarios that plague us in our little region, in our little comfort zone. Today I shared the scenario, and it was the murder of Maceo Snipes. It was the murder of Maceo Snipes, and the date was July the 18th, 1946. Maceo Snipes, a United States Army World War II veteran, was fatally shot in the back just hours after casting his vote in the Georgia Democratic primary. And let me make sure I get my phone setting so I can go ahead and get this rolling. In the Georgia Democratic primary. This was 1946, right here in the state of Georgia, y'all. In the Georgia Democratic primary, Snipes was shot in his back hours after casting his vote in the Georgia Democratic primary. Snipes was the only African American to vote in the Democratic primary in Taylor County, Georgia. He was the only one to vote that was African American. During this time, the white supremacist terrorist group, the KKK, was in its prime. And this is in Georgia, y'all. KKK members were responsible for multiple lynchings of Black people who decided to vote following Snipes' murder. So after this, more people went out there, and more people went out there of African American descent and tried to cast their vote. And they were also lynched here in the state of Georgia. Responsible for multiple lynchings of Black people who decided to vote following Snipes' murder. For example, 2 Black couples were lynched 5 days later. Prior to the election, the KKK had made threats to lynch any Black person who dared to cast a ballot. Snipes and his mother were both sharecroppers on Homer Chapman's land in Butler, Georgia. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, this story right here gets gruesome as we even talk about it. The day after Snipes cast his vote, 4 white men pulled up to the land in Chapman rented to the Snipes family. All 4 were suspected KKK members. 2 were later identified as Edward Williamson and Linwood Harvey, both also World War II veterans. Having pulled up outside Snipes' grandfather's house, the 4 white men asked Snipes' mother to call him outside. They then confronted him, and it ended with Williamson shooting Snipes in the back. After the men left, Snipes and his mother walked to Chapman's house. Chapman helped them walk 3 miles, 1, 2, 3 miles to the hospital in Butler. The hospital staff did not treat Spikes until 6 hours later. 6 hours, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours later, y'all. And by then, he needed a blood transfusion. The staff claimed that they did not have any Black blood. They did not have any Black blood. 2 days later, Snipes died in the hospital from his injuries. Williamson was initially was an initial suspect in the investigation. In front of the coroner jury, he claimed that Maceo owed him $10 in debt. Supposedly, Williamson and Harvey went to Snipes to confront him about his debt. Williamson said that Snipes had pulled out a knife, and so he shot him in the back twice. Claiming self-defense, the coroner, J.D. Cook, and a jury declared Williamson's actions justified, and Williamson was exonerated on his charges on July 29th, 1946. And so the story of Maceo, Brother Maceo, he died because he took the time to make sure he challenged the system. He was a registered voter, and he voted. He was the only person of African-American descent in Taylor County to get out there and vote. These scenarios are still happening in today's society, y'all. Lincolnton right now, you have an issue where they're trying to consolidate all the precincts into one location in the middle of town where most of the white folk live in that town, in that actual county. And so basically, you have to go past them. This is 2021, y'all. You have to go past them. If you don't believe me, Lincolnton, Georgia, Lincoln County. This is Googleable, y'all. I'm not making this up. And we are still in 2022 now, still kind of dealing with these things. So what if the tables were turned, y'all? What if we were allowed to vote, since when we were allowed to vote, to be a part of the voting system? Where would we be at in America? Where would we be at in America? Yes, it's 9 precincts down to 8 precincts. And it's actually going to be 1 precinct in the middle of Lincoln County. And so this is something that people are marching for, people are fighting for, people are doing everything they can to make sure we turn the pages on the history of America. And so they don't want to talk about critical race theory, or we don't want to talk about racial issues in America, but then we keep creating racial issues in America. And so it's a slap in the face that you don't want to talk about it, but you keep creating racial barriers in our society. And so in the state of Georgia, we know about Senate Bill 202 that was passed through the state senate last year, and so Georgia's going to be up again. We're in new session Monday. Friday was the first day of the week, and so we got another 35, 34, 35, 36 days in session. And so it's so important for us to make sure we keep out. And Rebecca, they did that in Milwaukee Spring 2020, 78 down to 4. This is happening across all the United States of America. And this is strategy because the power structures that be privileged is in control is losing its stronghold on the United States of America. And they don't want us to actually be a part of the system. They don't mind being working class, but they don't want us all to be a part of a system. They don't want a fair and prudent system to keep America flowing and going. And so Brother Maceo was the one back in 1946. I can only imagine if we're going to kind of stuff we're going through today in 2021, I can only imagine what it was almost 60 years ago, 70 years ago, how it was for him to have the courage to go into a voting booth and actually vote. And we didn't have all this technology and all this other good stuff like that we have right now. And it wasn't about who he voted for. It was the fact to send a message that an African-American man should not be voting in America, in American society. And that same conversation, that same mentality with Senate Bill 202 in the state of Georgia is still prevalent in the minds of people who have been in charge and control of this country since this country was formed. And so we need to make sure we're having candid conversations. There's no more excuses. Everybody needs to show up to the polls. Everybody needs to show up to the polls. Everybody needs to make sure that they're doing everything they can, whether you absentee ballot, early vote, whether you show up to the polls on election day. The primary cannot be skipped. You're going to have Board of Election seats. You're going to have county seats, county commission seats in the primaries. You're going to have tax commissioner seats in some areas. You're going to have state senate and state rep seats in some area in all the state of Georgia. You're going to have down the ballot from your lieutenant governor, from your governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, all the way down the ballot, all the way down the ballot to the school board seats. You're having a lot of people who have stepped up to the gate and want to challenge the system to make sure they run for me and you. And so we can no longer sit back and wait for these opportunities to arise. We have to step up into the gate. And some of y'all out there, we need to get away from our fears. And some of us out there need to challenge the system and run for public office. Those dates in the state of Georgia are March the 7th through March the 11th. I'm going to talk about that till I'm blue in the face, because you know what? It's so important that we challenge the system and make our voice heard. And so my next point that I really want to talk about and discuss, politics is a strange sport, y'all. It's a very strange sport. And sometimes people get in bed with other people and they do endorsements and they do all kind of other sleazy backdoor political things to kind of get the agenda across the board. And so I'm talking to my Black people here in the 1st Congressional District now. If we're not willing to make sure in the state of Georgia, if we're not willing to make sure that the African-American agenda is not brought to the table, and I'll repeat this conversation all the way to November, if we're not willing to make sure those people who are trying to be our elected officials are making sure that a Black agenda is at the table, then we're going to keep getting the crumbs that we keep getting. And so, be honest with you, job market is up for sale on this election. Infrastructure is up for sale on this election. Policy is up for sale on this election. All the things that control the narrative in our community is up for election in this election cycle. We do have a few people that are running against Buddy Carter, and I'm glad that more people are becoming more interested in running for the 1st Congressional District seat. I'm not going to comment right now about how I feel about anybody within that race, but as I'm telling you now, the closer we get to the election cycle, I will be calling out some factors that I do observe, and I'm going to call out some things that I do not like. But before I do that, we have to make sure that we have a strong enough audience to be able to make sure that I'm not expending my energy to go out there and do false narrative research and stuff like that. Because what I want to do is I want to pull all the facts. I got information in the day about some of those candidates in the 1st Congressional District that I'm not too pleased about. But right now is not the time for me to talk about that conversation, because what I want to do is between now in May, I want to build a strong enough audience of people out there. So when I'm using this platform and I'm using my voice and my speaking and everything under the sun, I'm making sure I'm channeling the energy to make sure that we're pushing the platform for our community to not get the crumbs that we've been getting, but to get what we deserve. And so let me put something up right here. Boom. It is what it is. We don't have to suffer from the itis. This is a live show that's being presented by the ATR platform. ATR is moving into another direction, and it's going to be launching a brand new strategic platform that we're going to have more energy, more dialogue, more conversation. They'll go across this whole state of Georgia. And preferably what I want to make sure is I want to make sure that everything that affects Chatham County, the 1st Congressional District, and the state of Georgia in that order, we're addressing it, and we're making sure we're bringing thought-provoked conversation. And so the ballot is up for grabs this go around. We got to make sure we stay smart. We got to make sure we stay educated, and we got to make sure that we're within the confines of the structure that's being presented to us. And so without further ado, I do want to get back to that last piece of the conversation. It's a shame on some people, because you have the opportunity to be strong leaders, but because we want to play politics, you're going to get called out, and we're going to be calling people out. So I hope everybody who needs to call me out, go ahead and get it out there, because my thing is, I promise you, I will have a stronger and louder voice by the time election cycle comes, and we're going to make sure that we channel all that energy, all that stuff that's going across the board. We're going to make sure that we make sure all that stuff happens. Shouts out to Bernard Brown. He has a show coming at 10 o'clock at night. After dark, we get a little freaky after dark. So shouts out to my big brother, Bernard Brown. We're going to have a special guest on there. I might come on there for about 30 minutes, Bernard. I'm not going to do it a lot this year, because I really want to make sure that what you got going on is strong, what I got going on is strong, and all the platform pieces on ATR are moving the narrative forward, because that's what we need to be at energy-wise, making sure our narrative moves out clear. Shouts out. So, Cecilia, how you doing? I appreciate you for always keeping up with you. Rebecca Rose, you've been a strong supporter. John Hayden, Cecilia, I appreciate y'all for taking the time to be here. I need y'all to make sure y'all texting, typing, and making sure we sharing this platform to make sure more people are watching this. We need to be 50 strong as far as when we get into the election cycle. So when I start calling out all these elected officials or potential elected officials or people who want to move the narrative in our community, it's going to be accepted, and it's not going to be rejected. So it's so important for us to have open dialogue, good dialogue with each other. And so I want to make sure it's understood that we have all kind of platforms, all kind of shows. And Natalie, I know you don't want me to put you out there, but Natalie, shouts out to my good friend Natalie. She is starting to put this thing together with the ATR platform. So when we make this announcement, when we put this thing out here, ATR is going to be revolutionary when it comes to the Black community in our environment. And so shouts out to everybody on the ATR platform. I don't need you to do a shout out for me, but I'll do a shout out for all y'all, because it's so important that we all give our messages out there in the community so we can make sure we educate the community more and more and more. And what if we built an all-star team that was actually making sure that when it came to health, we had somebody talking to you. If you came from the prison system and you wanted to be reformed, somebody was talking on behalf of you. When it comes to politics, somebody's talking to you on behalf of you. When it comes down to politics in the city of Savannah, somebody's talking to you. When it comes to things going on in the Black community, somebody is talking to you. It is so important. When we want to talk about the weeping times, somebody's out there talking for you. It's so important that we build this platform, we build this brand, and we're going to move this narrative so far ahead of in light years ahead of all the news media that actually is supposed to take care of what goes on in Chatham County. We're going to start suppressing, and we're going to start beating them to the stories. And it's going to get to the point where they're going to come to us for whatever news media needs to be given out there when it comes to the Black community. So this is how important we need to be doing. What if we had our own media as African Americans. I don't want to take away from anybody else's agenda. I don't hate any other race. I don't hate any other group of people. Unfortunate thing is, Savannah, Georgia has been 50+% when it comes to the narrative, but then we don't always get our message out there. We don't always get it out there clear. And that is why we need to make sure we break the what if stanza of what if we had our own media. Well, we are going to expand on the opportunity of having our own media, and that's why ATR is going to be that platform that's going to be all things relevant. We're going to push the narrative forward. I know y'all weren't expecting me to talk about that today, but this is what we're going to talk about, because my thing is too many times when I pick up my cell phone and somebody texts me some crap that's going on in Savannah, somebody done sold this thing out, somebody done sold, whoa, y'all, somebody done sold this person out, somebody done sold this thing out. It's all, you see, my mic is even jumping because when I said the word sold out, my mic got scared, but somebody sold this thing out. Somebody sold this person out. It's time out for that, y'all. The sellouts need to be called out. And my thing is, it's going to be happen. It's going to happen, but it's too early to call them out, y'all. Because if you call them out, then we tend to forget these conversations. But if you call them out at the right time, you just build the case up against these people. And then guess what? You put the narrative out there. What if we could start making sure we had those people who can actually move the narrative forward? It's so important. What if every seat that affects us in the state of Georgia, we had a candidate running that represented the Black agenda? What if we actually took the time to create a Black agenda and challenge every narrative across the state of Georgia? Imagine what we could be doing if we worked together as a people and we did not work together for those presidents that are dead and on green sheets of paper. If we really work together and look past the presidents on them dead sheets of paper, and we actually work together to make sure we build among our brothers and sisters, we created jobs, we created economics, we created an environment that looked at the problems and fixed the problems with a solution-based conversation. What would we be like if we started thinking like this? It's time out. My thing is, I know it may sound like I'm controversy in my conversation, but it's time out for the sellouts. But it's time up for us to make sure we have solution-based people in those positions, moving the narrative forward. And so shots out once again, Julius Hall, for putting this ATR platform together, and all my brothers and sisters who have shows from Sunday all the way to Saturday. And I know Julius always talks about how we got 30, 40, 50 different shows. He wants, the vision is beautiful. The vision is big. But my thing is this. I need you people out there to start communicating with me so I can make sure I challenge Julius to understand what we need to do so we can kill the what if we had Black media in our community and actually drove Black media to talk about our story, to talk about our issues, to talk about the struggle that's going on in our community. I had a 15, 20-minute conversation with somebody who said, man, I wouldn't mind running for public office, Jay, but the problem with me running for public office is I don't have the money. And I hear that all the time. But my thing is this. I'm not asking you to run for the president of the United States. I'm asking you to run for something small and to matriculate your way up to something big, because that's how we need to grow. We need good people in politics all the way down from the bottom of the ballot all the way to the top of the ballot. This week alone, I am so psyched, because this week alone, I met with 6 different people who plan on running for public office, and some of them are planning on running against each other. But what I told them is, if God told you to run, if you're ready to make those moves, then make those moves and make it happen. See, it's time out for those old school mentalities in the Black community. When it came to the old struggles, it's not your time. I haven't endorsed you yet. I just have not picked out my heir or the person I want to give my throne to yet. It's time out for that, y'all. It's time for us to start running for public office. It's time for us to start challenging the system. It's time for us to try. What if you just tried? What if you just took the time and just tried? Sometimes I don't even think you got to do much. Just by putting your name on the ballot, makes the situation a whole lot better in some cases. But if you're not willing to step forward, you're not willing to challenge the narrative, you're not going to win. And I can tell you right now, there's strategies right now. I mean, it's so wonderful now. Let me move my mic right. It's so beautiful right now that politics is becoming easier and easier to get involved in, because you can do research, you can do strategy, you can do everything under the sun to push the narrative, because you don't have 100% voter participation. And so my thing is, you can concentrate on that 25% voter participation. You can fix narratives around that 25% voter participation, and you can make things happen just with those people right there. It's becoming so easy. It's almost becoming surgical as far as when politics is concerned. All I really care about is find me somebody to run for these seats, and I promise you, I'll help by doing everything I possibly can to help that person win. And when it comes down to people running against each other, I'll make sure that both persons understand that so-and-so is running against so-and-so, and so-and-so is running against so-and-so. And then I give both people a narrative alternative so they don't have to run against each other. But my thing is, in the end, I tell every single person who's running, you have to run. It's not my decision. It ain't your mama's decision. It ain't your wife's decision. It ain't your husband's decision. It's nobody's decision but you. Because when it all comes down to it, when that gavel hits the floor and that gavel hits the mallet and everything under the sun, you're the one that's in that position. So nobody else should tell you what you can or what you should be doing when it comes to being an elected official. You have to have that drive, that authority, and that heart and that desire to run for office. And if you sell us out, I'm going to call you out, and I'm going to make sure other people call you out. And I cannot control what happened before me, but anything dealing with the situation where I had a hand in getting you in that seat, I'm going to make sure I hold you accountable. And if you tell me you don't want me to deal with you, I'm going to play the game you asked me. If you say, Jay, I don't want, I want to handle this on my own, I want to deal with my own situation and stuff like that, I'm cool and I'm game. But just understand, when you say that, the number of days in between you saying that and you asking me, coming back to me asking for help, I'm going to keep that count. And so I don't want you coming to me asking me for help when it's time to run again, because it's too late, because you chose not to communicate with me. You chose not to conversate with me. You chose not to do what you needed to do. And like I said last week, I said we had a conversation amongst 4 African-American men. Last week we had this conversation. We said, hey, what if we collectively all got together and worked together for the greater good? And what would our community look like? And I agree. I think our community would look a whole lot better if we did get together. But the problem about that conversation is this: when the 4 people get together, we all got to be communicating and working together to make sure that flow plan works. We cannot for any reason move away from that position and start working with other people who we say that we want to replace or get out of position or whatever you want to call it. We can't turn our backs and do what we know is right or wrong. We have to make sure that we're always staying on the gate of what's right and what's best for the community. I'll say that again, because some people ain't gonna hear me. For the community, we have to make sure when we get in these positions, we're doing what's best for the community, not for the personal strategy, not for the personal effort, not for the personal gain, not for the personal chess move that you're trying to put. It's got to be for the greater good of the community. And it cannot always be just the greater good of the community that's just around you. And a lot of times we think that the economics that are around us are the greater good for the community. But if we know that we have downtrodden, we know we have poor people, we know we have African Americans, we know we have people who do not understand politics, and we forget them or treat them like they're tertiary citizens, not even secondary or primary, but tertiary citizens, then shame on us as a people. And it's always going to come back on us to haunt us. And so I love the fact that people tend to forget the kind of conversations and motives. What I tend to do is I do an excellent job of documenting these conversations, and I don't always have to make it public. I can send it out in text message 300-400 times, and it's going to do way more damage than me going on social media saying Blondie is blue and she don't care about you. I don't have to do that. I can put it on social media in a discreet way. I can send it, like I said, through text messages, and making sure the text message. And I'm gonna tell you that text message, when it comes to negative news or negative Nancy news, that thing right there is viral, and it can short, boy, it can short out something worse than anything else. So understand this: politics ain't always above water. And a lot of times, a lot of things that people do scripted above water backfire on people. And so when we see these tactics, what if we were just straight up as far as what we could do? Man, we could conquer the world. We can conquer mountains. We can move the narrative so fast, it's crazy. But a lot of us are not willing to step in the gate and do right by the people. And so guess what? Your time gonna come. And when the time comes, it's gonna come. And so I spoke of earlier. I know I went left. I spoke of my brother Maceo Snipes. We need more people like Maceo Snipes who understands the power of going to the ballot and voting in all elections to make sure that you have better representation than what you had before today. We can complain all day about the elected officials all we want, but if we're not doing what we got to do to step forward in the narrative to ensure that we have a better set of representation, then you can't do nothing but sit back and accept what comes before you. And a lot of times, I hear folk, when they tell me, "Oh, I'm not scared," or you got to understand what people go through and everything like that. I get it. I hear it. I know it to be true. But in the end, the people who qualify March the 7th through March the 11th are the people that's on the ballot. And then they battle out in May 24th. They fix it out to determine who's going to represent us on November the 8th. That's the hardcore. There's nothing. That's math. Math is 2 + 2 is 4. I ain't never seen a scenario where 2 + 2 is 10. 2 + 2 is 4. That's math. What that means is March the 7th through March the 11th, whoever goes into the registering qualifying agency and puts their name on the ballot during that week is going to be the slate of people that we're going to determine from one way or another after May 24th, November the 8th. Somebody is going to represent us in the political structures that are available to us. And in some regards, when it comes to the school board and the board of election and your judicial seats, I want to remind y'all, I want this clear. 2018, 19%, a little less than 19%, determined who the judiciary people were in this community, who determined the judges for this community. 19% determined who was on the school board in this community. Who represented 5 members on the school board was determined in this community. In 2018, 19% chose the 2 people who went on the board of elections and turned around and put back the guy in 2018 to put back the guy and Pat Mahoney, who put back Pat Mahoney back in that driver's seat. What I'm saying is actually, what I'm talking about is fact. This is information. You go to the Board of Election page, you can see exactly what I'm talking about. Pat Mahoney, who has had questionable decisions throughout his 8-year career now. Pat Mahoney, who is appointed by the 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, who will be on the ballot May 24th, and we will in Chatham County make the determination what 2 people will go on that ballot from the Democratic Party. Democrats will go onto the ballot and make that determination. The Republican Party, Republicans will go on the ballot, make that determination. Those 4 people will be on the ballot, and they will be determined on May 24th. And then sometime between May 24th and January 1, they're going to have conversations to determine, the four of them will determine who is the chair for the Board of Elections. I just broke down to you how the Board of Elections works on purpose, because you know why? Because you are the people out there in the audience who determine who the two Democrats are and who the two Republicans are. Now, I can't say this without a shadow of a doubt. One Democrat is no longer around. One Republican is no longer around. There was a part of that 2018 debacle that we had. The other Republican is supposed to not be running again, and I believe the other Democrat who is still a part of that whole structure in 2018. Both of those two people will more than likely be on the ballot, not be on the ballot, but they will probably be in the determination factor of what will happen January 1 when we make the determination piece as far as who we think. Now, in case of a tie, so we can understand and know the full magnitude of the politics, in case of a tie, if the two Republicans and two Democrats say they want Jay Jones, they can't make a determination on whether they want Jay Jones to be the Board of Elections chair, then it floats up to the county commission. Now, we have a Democratic county commission, and they will be on the ballot in 2024. Based on the decision, if the decision is put in their hands, based on the decision of who they choose to be the Board of Elections chair, I promise you, if they choose the wrong person, I personally will run for chair again in 2024. I personally will run for again in 2024 for chair. So you can quote that. My good friend Orlando, you heard me. You heard it first. I will run for chair in 2024 if that happens. It should not happen. That's my point. It should not happen. But if it happens and they put the wrong person up there, because I'm going to give them a recommendation. Now, the chair is known and notorious for saying, I don't take orders from nobody. And so I hope the fact that he don't take orders from me, because if you put the wrong person in play, then he is open himself for a conversation. And so in 2022, things are going to be done a whole lot different. We're not going to allow people just to run amok, ransack, and be politically in silos and make determination and decisions and not communicate with the people. People are waking up and people are running for public office. I think that this is going to be one of the most crowded Democratic, crowded Republican primaries in the long history of the state of Georgia. You probably got anywhere from 2 to 5 candidates running at every position for the state of Georgia. And I love it, because what that means is each one of those positions has to get out there and has to find ways to communicate with people. That means they're going to come and talk to South Georgia for a change. And that's what I love, because when they were running unopposed, they didn't always feel that they need to come down here to South Georgia until the last week of the election. No more of that. They're going to pay closer attention to what goes on in our area, and I love it, and I'm going to build my politics around that. And so with that being said, this is the what if scenario of it is what it is. What if we can turn out the vote at 40, 50%? I'm just saying 40. I'm just saying double what we did 4 years ago. What if we can turn out the vote 40, 50%? I'm not worried about whether they're going to steal elections and all that stuff like that. All I care about is we flood them out so much that they can't, if they try to mess up something, we catch them off guard. That's where we need to be at. If we show a low voter turnout, it's easier for them to manipulate the numbers and manipulate the system. But if we have a hardcore, hard-driven turnout, then guess what? They can't change those numbers and they can't do anything otherwise. We need to show up and make sure we press that button in the ballot box to make sure we choose the people who we want to elect in this election cycle. If they do anything in thievery, it's going to be tied to the absentee ballots. And guess what, people? If you don't know your voting precinct, go to my voter page right now and figure out where you vote at. And if your information don't come up on my voter page, then guess what? I'm telling you what to do next. Go to my voter page and register to vote. It's just as simple as that. Maybe if you ain't voted in 4 or 5 years, you need to go out there and register to vote. You ain't a registered voter no more. I'm just gonna put it out there. If you have not been participating in the election for 4, 5, 10 years, you're not a registered voter no more. And so take the time to find out myvoterpage.com, and then you put Georgia, and then you'll be able to go in the system and figure out all the information you need to know. Is MVP. You can go to the Secretary of State page, and the MVP page is tied to that. It's all there. It's no questions, no harm, no foul. And so the what if scenarios are going back into the books. The what if scenario for tonight is, what if we showed up to the polls like no other? The first part is, we talked about Maceo Snipes, and what if Maceo Snipes, was allowed to do what he needed to do? What if African Americans were allowed to vote back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s? It's a shame that we're allowed to vote now and we won't even show up to the polls. And I'm just calling for what it is. What if we just showed up for Maceo? If you don't do it for anybody else, do it for Maceo. If we don't show up to the polls, do it for our brothers and sisters who are disenfranchised, who are felons on charges, and they're just waiting for their time to actually matriculate away so they can actually be a part of the system. Vote for them. Vote for your kids. Vote for your dog if you got to vote for something. Vote for a reason. Just do not sit back and not allow the system to do what it needs to do. And it's so important for us to get to the polls, motivate each other. Take your mama, your daddy. Make sure you get them an absentee ballot if they don't want to get out the house because of COVID. It's so much going on. And that with the absentee ballot process has changed completely. Learn what the absentee ballot process is all about. If I need to do it, text me, say, Jay, you need to do a Zoom talking about the absentee ballot. I have no problem doing that either. But my thing is, I'm not going to waste my time in 2022. I'm not going to do these Zooms and people don't want to pay no attention. When it all comes down to it, I'm going to make sure I take care of James. But my thing is, I love my people so much that we could do so much more if we followed through and did what we need to do and showed up to the polls and voted. I don't know how much more I need to say it. I done beat this dead horse to a pulp. It is so important for us to get up there and show our marquee and vote. And so we're down to the last 20 minutes of the show. It is what it is. Let's make sure we're still wearing those masks. They're saying when I was listening to NPR this morning, they're saying that the coronavirus, this last Omicron is what it is it's more contagious, but not more people are dying. But because people have the mentality of getting coronavirus, whether it be the Omicron, the Delta variant, or it's been shown in the past that people were dying from it so much that people are going to the hospital in panic and stuff like that. And I'm not telling you not to go to the hospital in panic. If you feel you're sick enough to go to the hospital, by all means, go to the hospital and do that. But people are not dying as much from previous variants. And so it is more contagious. I'm not saying it's not more contagious, but it's coming to that point where it's hitting that spike. And so when it hits the spike, you can go a week, maybe a week or two, hopefully crossing fingers that when we do our next show, we're talking about COVID, the Omicron variant, tearing down on the backside, and we're working away from COVID altogether. Where I'm not saying we're going to ever go back to normal society, because I'm going to tell you right now, society has a new norm. And so with us having a new norm, we need to be as most prepared as possible to what the ramifications look like. And we need to be building our base around that piece right there. And so when it comes down to the COVID variant, let's keep the Omicron variant of COVID virus. Let's make sure that we're still wearing masks. Let's make sure we're vaccinated. Let's make sure we're boosted. The vaccination is going down to younger audience. Let's make sure our kids are vaccinated. Let's make sure that we got our shot records. If you don't need to go out, then don't go out. Try to stay home, try to stay around, and this, that, and the third, to make sure that we're lowering the contact ratio or whatever case may be. But at the same time, we're making sure herd immunity is doing its just due. And so I'm hoping and praying by Super Bowl weekend, we're on a sharp decline. when it comes to coronavirus across the United States of America. I'm hoping, I'm praying that the government structure is not playing with the numbers to hold it back, to make sure economics is working this angle. I always got them conspiracy theories in the back of my head, but I mean, just reality of it. I pray to God that that's not happening on behalf of the COVID virus. And then the other thing is, and I'm gonna close this out because I got 15 minutes, and this is a hardcore discussion that I have all the time with people, and it's called customer service. And we're going to close out in this conversation with customer service. Customer service is in an all-time low right now. It's in an all-time low right now. Food in fast food restaurants is becoming horrible right now. The service in fast food restaurants are becoming horrible right now. Management is getting horrible. The people who doing the service are getting horrible. More and more items are not available as it used to be available. But people out there, what I want you to understand is this. There's two variables that I want to make sure we're looking at. And I'm not defending those variables, but I just want to make sure we call out those variables. It's like any kind of other industry. When you have high turnover rate, which means when you're not having those employees and staff members who are experiencing how to mitigate and work through problematic situations, especially in restaurant industry, then what happens is your service is not going to be the greatest service there is. Now, the caveat to that is this. Now, we also need to make sure that those employees are getting paid just doing what they need to be paid for. And so when you do have experienced employees, we need to be paying those experienced employees a decent, livable wage to make sure we keep them around. Now, that's not for every business. So for my small business owners who always complain and say, well, I can't afford to give $15 an hour, then my thing is this. Then you need to have a better business model. So therefore, you can make sure you maintain the structure of how many employees you can have and how many employees you don't need to have. And that's simple cut right there. But we need to make sure that to get better customer service, we have to do a better job as far as making sure employees are trained. You have to do a better job of making sure your employees have the right kind of finances where they can handle their business and they're not bringing their stress from home into the job environment. But at the same time, employees, and I'm calling this out for employees, as me being a customer, I should not have to come into your establishment and you got to make sure you answer that text message, or you got to see that TikTok, or you got to do whatever it is on your cell phone before you take my order, because that's not customer service. We need to get back to true peer customer service when it comes to the retail industry, when it comes to the restaurant industry, and when it comes to the hotel industry. If we don't get back to it, then we're going to keep seeing a deficit in these environments. And so, I mean, I'm almost to the point of doing a boycott on restaurants because I'm just not seeing that customer service I used to see. And I'm going to tell you straight up, when Chick-fil-A starts slipping on customer service, you know we got a problem in our industry. And Chick-fil-A don't trip up too often, but they're starting to trip up too. And so my thing is with you and McDonald's used to have that superior customer service, but McDonald's has kind of slipped up too in recent weeks. So when it comes down to it, I want to see better customer service out there. We need to make sure that when we have great customer service, when we have great restaurants, we need to share those environments just as fast as we are sharing those negative Nancy environments. Because my thing is, I can put on Facebook, and I live in Pooler, and I see it on the Pooler page all the time. This restaurant's bad. This restaurant's bad. This restaurant's bad. But it's not as often I see this is the restaurant we need to go and support because this person had great customer service. And if they had more customers there, they can bring a livable wage. And so we can flood those restaurants. And so I encourage everybody, those restaurants that are doing great job is customer service, taking care of their employees. We need to make sure we give them shots out just as much as shots out we give to those restaurants who are not taking care of their employees and doing a bad job. And so my thing is, that's my last topic. I really want to talk about customer service. And that topic would be, what if customer service was better? What if we started highlighting those restaurants, those retail organizations that were doing a phenomenal job in our community? What if we patronize them even more? What if we make sure that when that person shows great customer service, I want to bring that person to my job. And what I'm gonna ask that hey, young lady, how much you getting paid? Oh, you getting paid $12 an hour? Why don't you come work for me and I'll pay you $15 an hour? Why don't we start going after those employees and making our industries and our environments much, much better? Now, I know somebody's going to be mad at me for saying, well, why would you take one employee from this place and bring this place right here? Because you know what? I want to make sure that the places I frequent the most have the best customer service in the industry, because when it comes time for me to give them a tip, I'm gonna make sure they get that 18% gratuity. But if you're not giving me good customer service, you may not get $1 in, as far as gratuity is concerned. And so, yes, we need to make sure, just like we shout out to all those bad restaurants, we need to make sure we shouting out all those good restaurants. And so I want to talk to people throughout this week right here, because my thing is, I'm almost to the point where I'm gonna find me somebody, and she know who she is. I can't think of her name right now. She gonna probably be mad at me, but I got a food inspector that I call anytime I want to know about a restaurant. And Praise-Yon, I love you. Praise-Yon Andrews, my good friend. We came up through the industry. HR expert all together, and she's a food expert too. She has been on the dime as far as telling what industries are working out for us in when it comes to restaurants. And so, shouts out to Praise-Yon Andrews for always letting me know when I need a restaurant. You know, when I want a Mexican restaurant, or if I want an Italian restaurant, a restaurant, she's been spot on as far as give me those identifiable locations. And she was doing food critics food critiques at one point in time last year. I hope she steps forward and does it again, because she was doing a phenomenal job, and people would ask me where to go out and eat, and they would actually talk about those restaurants right there. So I appreciate that. Shouts out to everybody else. I appreciate those people who've been following us. We're down to the last 10 minutes. Ivan, one of my other good fans, I appreciate you. If customer service keeps slipping, restaurants and companies will automate. And you're absolutely right. But how can they? I think that you still got some time between automation and actually doing that piece right there, because yes, jobs given over to robots. And you're right. If you go to Walmart right now, you used to have a cashier during the holiday season, but guess what? Now you go to Walmart, the robots, you can and you are the robot. You are the person who takes the buggy to the thing, and you're the one who scans all the stuff. And they've replaced cashiers, and they really don't care if back in the day they were scared about losing profits and somebody putting something in the bag that they didn't pay for. Walmart and places like Kroger's and Walmart, they don't care about that no more. And because of that, there's no customer service involved. But guess what else? There's no job there. And that's what we got to keep an eye on. If we do not fix customer service, you spot on. If we don't fix these restaurants, we don't fix these environments, then what's going to happen is we're going to go, and if you go to restaurants or Taco Bell, McDonald's, all these locations, now are being replaced. My wife is great at going when we go to Chick-fil-A or we go to Starbucks. She does it on her cell phone, and we bypass the line and we walk to the front and watch all them angry people in the line. Watch us walk up to the cabinet, grab our food, and go about our business. And we don't spend no time in no restaurant, especially in no line. And so these things are happening in our market. And the thing about it is, whether we like it as old people or not, young people are learning how this automation works, and they're taking full advantage of it. And so, but automation is a catch-22. It's going to take away jobs, but it's going to make it easier for the industry. And so if we're not creating those economic drivers, we're not those economic scenarios, and we're not making sure we take care of good customer service when we need to take care of good customer service, the industry is going to change. And so shouts out to everybody else who took the time to be with me for the last 53 minutes and 47 seconds. It's so important that we pay attention to what's going on in our environment. I promise you, between now and the end of January, I'm going to have my script together. I'm just trying to break the ice. I'm just trying to break the tone. I'm really trying to figure out how we're going to push this narrative. The what if scenario is the what if scenario, and it is what it is, and that's what we will be concentrating on. Shouts out once again to ATR for making sure they provide these platforms for us to make sure that we're communicating with all people out there in the world, and not just the single out people who control the economic flow of things in our community. And so with that, I'm getting ready to close out this show. I appreciate everybody. Shouts out to my brother, big brother Bernard Brown. He's going to have his second show in less than an hour and a half. You'll hear from Bernard Brown. His show is After Dark, and they talk about those after dark subjects. And so make sure the babies and kitties in the bed, and I'll probably give him 15-20 minute shout out, because I'm an advocate for his show, because he does bring up those conversations that men need to hear, women need to hear, and people need to hear. But it's after dark, so we can make sure that we have a mature audience. And shout out to him. On Mondays, Keisha Gibson Carter, we got a show called Two Doctors. I'm gonna learn more about that coming up. We got financial economic shows out there. We got a show for pretty much every week. I'm sorry, I got my brother who was talking about, you may have been convicted, but you don't have to let your conviction hold you hostage. There's a show about that. There's so many shows out there, and we are making sure on the ATR platform that we're going to make sure we touch every audience out there. So shouts out. I appreciate you, Julius Hall, for putting these platforms together. Yes, I am part of that team, but my thing is Julius Hall is the engine that makes all this stuff flow. And I know he gets frustrated, but we appreciate you for stepping forward and making sure our narrative is heard in the community. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and close us out. If y'all need me, I will see y'all next week. Tune in, 8 o'clock. It is what it is. We're going to be talking about the what if scenarios across the board. And so what? Guess what, y'all? Peace out. Talk to y'all soon.